Here's the thing about villains. Villains are not born. Villains are made. And that is very much the case for our Faxtus conductor Phrolova. The latest main story quest has been a wild ride to say the least, with many players, me included, being left with a mountain of emotions. And although the community seems to be pretty divided on their thoughts as to how the quest ended, this only highlights just how well executed the storytelling was. I think that all of us have a general idea of how to identify a villain in a story. I mean, bad guy does bad things. We usually just accept that. We don't feel that need to dig into why that person is the way that they are, unless of course we're given a reason to. It's also something that our brains have been trained to recognize in the media we consume. Think of characters like Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader, or Harry Potter versus Voldemort, or even Batman versus Joker. These binary opposites of good versus evil allow us to convey thematic messages as well as define our characters as a whole. But what happens when a villain is more than just a bad guy doing bad things? What happens when we learn the truth about their past? What happens when we can empathize with the villain? Don't get me wrong, Phrolova is certainly a villain, but she's not just a villain. And the way that the story allows us to get a peek into her tragic past, it allows us to empathize with her. Seeing a villain in a vulnerable state, seeing what drove them to their current self, can often make us feel pretty uncomfortable, because ultimately, it feels wrong. It goes against pretty much everything that we've been taught to believe in. When the lines between good and bad become blurred, it becomes a pretty jarring journey to experience. And this quest is the perfect demonstration of that. But what makes us as players want to root for someone like Phrolova? Let's be honest, Phrolova is not exactly, positively morally inclined, with a pretty lengthy list of heinous crimes she's racked up over the course of her long-lived life. She's summoned an army of tacit discords to terrorize Jinzo, crashed and sabotaged the Carnival in Raguna. She's sacrificed many lives for her experiments. She tried to convince Rover to kill Lupa. And, of course, she has continuously worked with the Faxtus. What's crazy is that that's not even the half of the things that she's done. But if I were to sit here and tell you the exact amount of things she'd done, we'd be here for at least 5 hours. And I hate to use this phrase, but it was all for a reason. All the human sacrifices, all the messed up experiments, and overall evil was done in hopes of her achieving her goal: to save her family. Before she was picked up by the Faxtus, Phrolova was a talented musician, a violinist who never failed to completely captivate her audience, with her town and family rallying behind her for support each and every time. She was the pride of the town and beloved by everyone. And after returning home from a big performance, Phrolova's world was turned upside down. A meteor crashed from the sky and destroyed everything within its path, and unfortunately, Phrolova's town along with it. From that meteor, Phrolova's mangled body rose from the dead, leaving her as the one and only survivor of the tragedy. All of her loved ones completely erased from existence in an instant, and there was nothing she could do about it. Stricken with grief and trauma, that day changed Phrolova's life forever, but also became the biggest motivator for her future actions. With her forte allowing her to manipulate tacit discords, Phrolova got to work and decided that one day she will get her family back. The only thing is, she hoped to achieve that by merging the reverberations with the bodies of tacit discords. And in the quest, it turns out that it won't exactly work, or at least not in the way that wouldn't place the entirety of Solaris 3 in danger. Phrolova wanted to use remnants of the Leviathan's power to successfully carry out her plan. By using Leviathan's ability to merge and assimilate, Phrolova could get her family back. Easy peasy. But of course, someone like the Rover could not idly stand by and allow such things to happen. Ultimately, Phrolova's plan is not for any grand scheme of things. Yes, it may align with the plans of the Faxtus, and also misaligns with Rover's morals. And her motivations are selfish. And selfishness is a very common trait that many villains share. She doesn't want to use the Leviathan's power to destroy the world, but she'd be willing to destroy the world for her family. And what makes this whole situation worse is that I get it. I feel like the majority of us, if given the chance to save a loved one who passed, we would take it. We know it's wrong, and we know it goes against the laws of nature, and yet many of us would jump at the opportunity in a heartbeat, because grief can be a mighty weight to carry, and grief can often drive us to lengths we never thought we'd go to. How we choose to deal with it can determine the person we become, and in Phrolova's case, it led her down a path of more death and more destruction. Just as Phrolova is not the perfect person, the rover is not the perfect hero. In fact, the story so far, and 2.5 especially, has proved that Rover is far from it, with many of us leaving the quest feeling quite conflicted. And that's okay, because it is all intentional. And it's not exactly a bad thing. The way our brains have been trained to recognize the villain, the same way we are able to recognize the hero. And that is because the hero and the villain typically have opposing morals, views, and traits, allowing us to differentiate between the two. But what happens when the hero doesn't stick to the script of what we expect a hero to be? The dynamic between Rover and Phrolova throughout the quest was something that was pretty fun to watch. Mostly because this entire time we have been naturally drawn to root for the rover. But also, we assume that everything the rover does is with the purest intentions and for the greater good. However, in this quest, we see Rover act out of anger and spite, traits that we don't usually associate with the hero of the story. One thing that I personally enjoyed was how Phrolova directly challenged Rover's actions, and Rover doubling down, taking the high road when it comes to their behavior. The truth is that it is easy for Rover to take the high road. It is easy for Rover to always be the good guy. But what if that's because just like the rover, we don't actually know the rover? And I also love how Phrolova called them out for their hypocrisy. As Phrolova is about to take the Thenodian gem from Fenrico's barely cold corpse, well, I guess technically cold since he literally turns into stone, but anyways. Rover stops Phrolova and insists her plan won't work. Phrolova had went through countless experiments with each of them failing, and with each failure driving her deeper into madness and desperation. Unlike Rover, she couldn't just wipe her own memories and forget all of her trauma. With Phrolova even commenting that until the rover has walked a mile, scratch that, a step in her shoes, who are they to have the right to pass judgment? And what makes it worse is that she's kinda right, which is a very uncomfortable reality to come to terms with. And in the end, Rover kills Phrolova. But despite the situation being, well, pretty shocking, it also makes sense. Was it the right thing to do? Yes. But does it change how many of us see Rover? Also yes. By portraying Phrolova in a way that humanizes her, we as the audience can't help but feel sorry for her in this moment, especially knowing that Rover had abandoned her in her time of need, which led up to her being adopted by the Fractus. But the harsh reality is, Rover had no reason to save Phrolova. She goes against everything that Rover stands for. She's a villain with no real signs of any remorse, and to Rover, that makes her unworthy of salvation. I think that the way wuwa has handled and written Phrolova has been truly a masterpiece. And honestly, I think she is one of the best written characters in the game so far. Is it because she's a villain? Maybe. But I think I mostly valued how much depth she added to the overarching narrative, as well as our perspective on everything we've seen so far. After the quest, I do have a few questions. Like, why has Rover abandoned not only a long list of people and companions, but why has Rover abandoned their past self? I mean, we know that they kept a promise to themselves, but why? Why is them not having their memories of their past so necessary for this path? Should the current Rover be held accountable for past Rover's actions? Does a memory wipe suddenly clear them of everything that they've done? Honestly, I'm not too sure. If a person has their memory completely wiped, would that not make them a completely different person? Or is it a true nature kind of situation where how Rover chooses to act is inevitable, because that's just who they are? With that being said, I will leave you with those questions to ponder. Please feel free to let me know in the comments your personal thoughts and theories on what we discussed, and as always, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you in the next one. Take care, bye!